Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site, bettingangle.us, a free site. It is February 16th, 2023. Let's talk heavyweight boxing. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, who would be the biggest risk for Joyce to fight in the heavyweight division? Let's run down a few names, right? Tyson Fury, I don't think that's the biggest risk because there's reward there, right? A win and you're the lineal heavyweight champion. Not only that, Tyson Fury isn't a huge puncher. Plus, Joyce has sparred with Tyson Fury. So the fight would go a few rounds. Like the recent Anthony Yarde fight against Beterbiev, Joyce would have an opportunity to actually show something in the early rounds for his fans, where even if he got stopped later in the fight, we would say, hey, Joe had his moments, right? Usyk, same type thing. Joe would have a size advantage. Joe would have a power advantage. It's unlikely that Usyk would stop or embarrass Joyce early. Plus, how much risk is involved when, if you win the fight, you're the heavyweight champ, right? Where there's reward, the risk isn't that great. Anthony Joshua. Let's face it, AJ's lost his last two fights, right? AJ has a new trainer. Now, maybe that's all going to click. AJ is going to start winning again and stuff like that. But I would argue that AJ at this stage is in transition. He might not be ready for Joyce. Joyce is certainly going to bring the heat. There's going to be a risk of AJ getting knocked out that did not exist in the Usyk fights. Ergovic, and I mention him here because, in my opinion, Ergovic is the heir apparent. Ergovic likely outboxes Joyce. I know that's shocking to many, right? But Ergovic would turn the fight into a boxing match. Even though Ergovic and Joyce both have good KO records, right? That's going to be a boxing match for a while. In other words, Joyce is not going to come in, get knocked out, and then have his career in jeopardy because he's in his late 30s, right? That would be a chess match. Let's talk about more danger. Deontay Wilder. Now, Joyce throws a great left jab. Wilder throws a great straight right. The question is going to be whose timing would be superior. Is Wilder going to time the right hand to come right over Joyce's jab and knock Joyce out? There's a knockout risk here. It would start from the opening bell. Understand, too, when you hear a guy like Joyce in his mid-30s, mid to late 30s, when you hear that Joyce has a great chin, a granite chin, and all this other stuff, it means he's getting hit flush on the chin. I'm just telling you, fighters have great chins until they don't. Right? You wonder whether a fighter like Roy Jones can get caught in the ring until he starts getting caught with regularity. Right? That Antonio Tarver fight, how long after that fight was the Glenn Johnson fight? Right? So Joyce, great chin at the wrong age. He gets hit with shots against a knockout puncher like Deontay Wilder. And I'll agree, Joyce probably outboxes Wilder, apart from the knockdowns. But understand the knockdowns would be a big part of that match Joyce, again, throwing a left jab that lines up with Wilder's right hand. You and I have been here online talking about real opponents to Wilder, right? Guys like Tyson Fury, guys like Robert Helenius. And in a majority of these fights, right, 2 of the 3 Fury fights, the Helenius first round. These quality opponents, Helenius knew Wilder, sparred with Wilder, couldn't avoid Wilder's power. Folks, Wilder's a dangerous opponent for a Joyce. Let's name another one. Luis Ortiz, southpaw. Here's where it gets interesting. Is Joyce's left jab even effective against southpaws? Isn't that a problem? Trust me when I say, and I know, I'm here criticizing ages. I know heavyweights age more slowly, but Luis Ortiz is pushing it, isn't he? Luis Ortiz is an older heavyweight. But believe me when I say Luis Ortiz is a very heavy puncher. Right? The problem is Luis Ortiz has developed a chin problem. Luis Ortiz is exhibit number 1 in terms of guys who look like they could take punches for most of their career, then they start going down in their mid-30s. Right? That can happen to Joyce if he gets hit by the wrong guy. Folks, I'm just telling you that styles make fights, not rankings. If you ask me who in the heavyweight division would have the capability of completely embarrassing Joyce if the roof caves in, I would not hesitate in telling you that Zhilei is a guy who could embarrass Joyce. Understand, Zhilei is a southpaw. Understand, Zhilei hits as hard as anyone in the heavyweight division. Don't tell me about rankings. Understand how Zhilei got the Ergovic fight. Ergovic was fighting for a mandatory. They went to several heavyweights and said, hey, fight Ergovic to become the mandatory. And heavyweight after heavyweight came up with excuses. Right? Guys were saying things like, not now. I just had my last fight. Even the idea of having a shot at becoming the mandatory contender for one of the belts at heavyweight wasn't enough to lure guys. Zhang was something like the 7th or 8th pick, I'm not kidding, to fight Ergovic. He said, yeah, I'll fight him. Folks, I'm just telling you, I was on here online saying this is a dangerous fight for Ergovic. And then Zhilei started beating the daylights out of him. Understand the nightmare Zhilei brings to the table. Right? His straight left hand is one of the best punches in the heavyweight division. Right? It's on par, in my opinion, with Deontay Wilder's straight right hand. But more importantly, and this is the important part here, Zhilei knows how to box. And Zhilei, let's just say, knows how to cut corners. So, he drops Ergovic with his offhand. It's a cuffing shot. I'll agree, the shot doesn't look completely clean, but folks, it's a right hand that Zhilei, who has head movement, who actually is savvy in the pocket, lands on the side of Ergovic's head. Right? Then we get to where the fight really could be interesting. That Ergovic fight's emotional. Zhilei comes in knowing he's the big underdog. There's a moment in that fight, folks, and this is kind of straight out of the Roberto Duran playbook. There's a moment in that fight where Zhang Zhilei headbutts Ergovic. Right now, we can have all the disclaimers we want. I believe it was intentional. Right? He starts out, he's roughing up Ergovic. He's the underdog. He's the guy with nothing to lose. He's better than advertised. He literally comes in. The headbutt is so thorough that, folks, it opens a gash on the top of Ergovic's head. From that gash, Ergovic starts bleeding. Now, you and I know, okay, it's a foul. It shouldn't count. You're a judge, you might penalize Zhilei for it. Right? You see the blood, you say, oh, that was an illegal move. I'm going to discount it on my scorecard. That's fair. But understand, the guy who gets headbutted, his body doesn't know it's a headbutt. His body's just been hit in the head. Right? I believe Ergovic is dazed and confused for rounds. Right, folks? Ergovic, that's the toughest fight Ergovic has had as a professional. Ergovic had to dig deep to beat Zhilei. Understand, Zhilei has a stamina problem. I know they have a lot of excuses for the Jerry Forrest fight, right? I want you to look at the last few rounds of the Jerry Forrest fight, right? Let's just say Zhilei looked as bad as Vladimir Klitschko did in the first Lehman Brewster fight, right? I think Zhilei has a stamina problem. But here's the problem. You have to push him to the later rounds. You have to get to the later rounds. I'm just telling you, there are a lot of sluggers at heavyweight who don't even think about the championship rounds. Because in their eyes, the fight's not going to last that long. It's not going to make the championship rounds. Right, folks? We keep hearing about Big Baby at heavyweight. Right, folks? Big Baby has never had to go through the championship rounds. Did you realize that? Joyce is in for one of the toughest fights of his life. Understand, this is a different personality type than Joseph Parker. Right, Parker, and I credit him for this. Parker will move in the ring. Right? Parker doesn't have to be big man on campus. Parker will take a step away from an Andy Ruiz. Right? Parker against Joyce is backing up and isn't afraid to have his back against the ropes. Right? I'm just telling you, that's not Zhang Zhilei. Right? He's been waiting for exactly this type of fight, where a guy is going to try to crash the pocket on him. A guy is going to try to beat him with volume. Right? Zhilei's fear is the guy who moves away from him. Right? If you're going to try to crash the pocket on Zhilei, that's perilous. So let me just say this. Had I been advising Joyce, and they said, we got an offer to fight Zhang Zhilei, right? This is some sanctioning body, elimination match. I'd say, hey, no, player, we're not taking that fight. Zhilei, too tough. I'd say, look at your age, look at the calendar. You've worked too hard. The fans know who you are. You can show up and mock these guys, right? These guys will look like they're running. If I were advising Joyce, I would say, hey, fight Fury. Fight Usyk before you fight Zhang Zhilei. Quite frankly, because of the payday involved, I'd say fight Joshua before you fight Zhilei. Fight Dillian White before you fight Zhilei. Right? I'm just telling you, I have no doubt in my head, and I'm an outsider, that Ergovic has no intention of ever fighting Zhilei again. So somebody is fooling themselves. Folks, you're getting a 5-1 on Zhilei to win this fight. Folks, this bet makes itself. You understand, when a guy has this level of punching power, he should never be a 5-1 underdog. There's not a heavyweight on the planet who I would make a better than 5-1 favorite against Deontay Wilder. Right? Understand, this level of punching power obliterates a lot. Right? So Joyce, folks, if Joyce comes in and is open for a second, and Zhilei's able to lower his left shoulder and get leverage on a punch, folks, we're going to find out the level of survival skills Joyce has. Let me just say, too, right after the Ergovic fight, right? And I'm still backing Ergovic. I believe there's going to be a coup in the heavyweight division. There's going to be a moment where you're going to be able to walk in the casino in broad daylight, get much better than even money odds on Ergovic, and then watch him deconstruct perhaps an Usyk if the Fury fight falls apart. Right? I'm very high on Ergovic. I'm telling you, when that Zhilei Ergovic fight ended, I thought to myself, man, I hope Ergovic takes at least 6 months off. Right? I saw blood dripping from this laceration at the top of his head. He looked beaten up. They were asking him questions after the fight, and I was just thinking, man, he took some shots. There were times in the fight where Zhilei connected, and I was wondering if the next scene was going to be Ergovic falling to the canvas. That's what Joyce is up against. Folks, take a coin out of your pocket and flip it. This fight's a jump ball. This fight's a toss-up. Right? If the casinos were only offering even money, I'd say, nah, I'm not touching it. They're offering 5-1 on Zhilei. That's the side of the play I'm going to be on. Right? Zhilei, I'm not even going to play games. Zhilei, 5-1, I'm on that side of the play. I'll hedge the play with Joyce by stoppage. Right? Joyce has great stamina. There is a possibility that Zhilei runs out of gas and then gets stopped. Right? But I'm just telling you, hey man, if you're hoping that a fighter outsurvives the other one, you understand you're dealing with a thin margin of victory. And I'm just telling you, Joyce is made to order for Zhilei. Understand, southpaws are accustomed to fighting right-handed fighters. A Joyce might not be accustomed to fighting a power-punching lefty. Right? I think Zhilei is a live underdog. Just understand, against Tyson Fury, you might be embarrassed. Right? You might come out looking like Derek Chisora did. Just understand, if Chisora has a bad night against Zhilei, they're giving him smelling salts. He's on the canvas. He doesn't know what hit him. Right? Zhilei's nickname sums it up. Big Bang. Folks, his left is like Deontay Wilder's right hand. I believe he actually has more boxing skills than Deontay Wilder, right? There's head movement. When Ergovic came in the pocket, Zhilei's not running. Zhilei was in there trading with Ergovic, and he knew how to handle himself, right? This is a highly skilled guy. If he needs to headbutt you, he'll do that, right? His left is dangerous. It's one of the most dangerous punches in the division, and he's not robotic, right? Like Ajaba is, who also has a big punch. No, this is a guy who is a little bit more adept, knows his way around the ring a little bit better. This is not the Joseph Parker fight. This is different. In my opinion, this is going to be the toughest fight of Joe Joyce's career. And I say that at a time when Joyce has already fought Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker. Right? Buckle up. This is one of the fights of the year. Right? This is a moment of truth for Joe Joyce. If I'm Joe Joyce and I'm getting hit with hellacious shots, I'm going to be in the ring thinking, how could anyone have told me to go forward with this fight? It's shocking. I'm taking Zhang Zhilei. Understand, if Zhilei wins, I believe it's going to be by stoppage, right? But if you're going to give me a 5-1, hey, I'll be the casino's Huckleberry. This brother will take all 12 rounds, right? Zhang Zhilei simply to win, hedged with Joe Joyce by stoppage. But I need for you to understand the risk involved. If Joe Joyce wins this fight by decision, you lose it all, right? The reason for the Joe Joyce by stoppage prop is because Joyce is such an overwhelming favorite. And to make the hedge work, you have to give away Joe Joyce by decision. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Fury, Usyk, AJ, Ergovic, Luis Ortiz. I don't think they're as dangerous based on styles as this hard-hitting southpaw is for Joe Joyce. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.